Good for him. Listen to this.
The unprecedented indictment of a former president of the United States for a campaign finance issue is an outrage.
Okay.
And I think it's clear to the overwhelming majority of the American people that this is nothing short of a political prosecution. Being affected by a Manhattan DA who literally campaigned on bringing charges against one particular American. And I must tell you that should be offensive to every American, left, right, and center. Every American deserves equal treatment under the law.
Good morning. It is Tuesday, March the 4th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the Star-Spangled Banner, we will have the Rape of the Mind, George-Lakoff, Indictment, Bud Light, Another Boycott, Should Biden Run, Healthcare, President Biden, Tucker Carlson, all that and more when I come back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing and remove your hats for the national anthem of the United States of America.
Thank you. And now there's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David-Bahnsen.
Those who founded the United States of America and wrote the Constitution saw property rights as essential for safeguarding all other rights. The right to free speech, for example, would be meaningless if criticisms of the authorities could lead to whatever you owned being seized in retaliation. Thomas Sowell. Private property are not words found in the Bill of Rights. Rather, they are the sine qua non of all the other rights enumerated therein.
And that was There's No Free Lunch. Back in a minute. Thank you. Imprimis, it's a magazine or pamphlet from Hillsdale College, and I got the latest issue, and the headline is America's Broken Healthcare, Diagnosis and Prescription. And so this reminds me of another vocabulary issue for the right, where a lot of Republican talk show hosts will make the mistake of referring to healthcare in the United States of America as a system. Wrong. It is not a system, it is a market. If it's a system, then socialism. If it is a market, then capitalism. Think about it. Back in a minute. Thank you. So I wanted to play this little clip. It's from Stuart Varney, but it's a clip of the President Joe Biden.
Firing on Joe Biden and the country, by the way.
Well, listen to this, Larry. Biden's on his Investing in America tour. He's celebrating the investments he made on climate. Just watch this. Roll tape, please.
The progress we've made creating strong, sustainable economic growth has been real. We passed the American Rescue Plan, the most aggressive economic recovery since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We passed the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the most substantial investment since President Eisenhower, and the CHIPS and Science Act, which we didn't get the other team to join very much, but the most significant investment in manufacturing and research and development in American history. The Inflation Reduction Act, the most transformative investment in climate ever.
Okay, Larry, part of that soundbite is the most aggressive economic recovery since FDR.
So what is the point I'm trying to make here with this is that the president is doing exactly what I say that all the politicians do. The first question is, did the president promise to do any of these? When he was running for office, did he promise to pass any of those bills? No. He made absolutely no promises. Donald Trump was the one that was making promises. All the rest of the politicians follow a saying that goes, under promise, over deliver. And if you take that to its logical extreme, it means promise nothing, deliver everything. Now, how do you do that? You do what Joe Biden is doing right here, right now. And that is you simply take credit for anything that happens that's positive. If the economy goes up, you take credit for it. If a bill gets passed, you take credit for it. And if things are negative, then you stay out of camera range. You do what you can to stay out of the way and not have to answer questions. You obfuscate and whatnot. So, again, that's an example right there of President Joe Biden doing what all politicians do. Don't promise anything and then take credit for all the good things that happen during your administration. Back in a minute. Thank you. A little bit more of Stuart Varney.
NASDAQ, there you have it. All right, folks, now this. It's a question that won't go away. Will Joe Biden run for a second term? Well, he appears to be putting off the decision. Politico says he won't decide until the summer, or perhaps even the fall. I don't think he's going to run. I say this for several reasons. First, he's too old. He's 80 now and showing all the signs of physical and mental difficulty. He turns 82 in 2024. The aging process doesn't reverse, you know. In poll after poll, a large majority of all voters thinks he's too old for a second term. About half of all Democrats say exactly the same thing. Too old. He's lost his own party because of his age. Second, he has a record of failure. Tough to get re-elected when you can't show a win. Crime, education, the border, the China threat, the New World Order threat, energy policy, inflation. Where is the win? Biden just doesn't have a track record that merits a second term. And frankly, I don't think the Democrats or the country want to risk a Kamala Harris presidency. The likelihood of her moving into the Oval Office goes up the older the president gets. The Veep is one more reason why Joe Biden won't run again. It's actually the Democrats who will have to pull the plug on a second term. Trump and the GOP have nothing to do with it. Too old, a record of failure, Kamala. Eventually, the Democrats will make the call. You can't run. Second.
So the problem with this is it's a prediction. Will he run? Who cares? The question is, should he run? Now, that's interesting that he's making these predictions as to whether or not he will run, and then using rather logical reasons for why he won't run instead of saying, should he run, and then giving the reasons. He's absolutely right. Well, he's not absolutely. He's talking about age. Age isn't the point. It's never the point. The point is health. And President Biden is clearly suffering. He's clearly he's feeble. There's no other way to put it. He's clearly suffering here. There's no reason from a humanitarian standpoint to put this poor man, through another campaign and then put him through another 4 years of presidency where he's going to end up making a fool out of himself on the world stage. And that's cruel. There's no other way to describe it. It's just cruel. So just for that reason alone, no, President Biden should not run for re-election. Now, and then his track record of failure, that's also a good reason to say that no, he shouldn't run for re-election. But the main, and also having Kamala Harris as vice president, also a good reason why he shouldn't run again. But the main thing is his health. Just even forgetting about party politics and partisanship, let's just look at this from a humanitarian standpoint. No, come on. Would you put your father or grandfather through a campaign if he was acting or as feeble as President Joe Biden? No, of course not. Nobody with an ounce of humanity would do that. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, a little bit of the rape of the mind.
The mysterious masochistic pact. In Arthur Koestler's masterpiece, Darkness at Noon, he describes all the subtle intricacies, reasonings, and dialects between the inquisitor and his victim. The old Bolshevik, Rubashov, preconditioned by his former party adherents, confesses to plotting against the party and the party line. He's partly motivated by the wish to render a last service. His confession is a final sacrifice to the party. I would explain the confession rather as part of that mysterious masochistic pact between the inquisitor and his victim, which we encounter too in other processes of brainwashing. The term masochism originally referred to sexual gratification received from pain and punishment, and later became every gratification acquired through pain and abjection. It is the last gift and trick the tortured gives to his torturer. It is as if he were to call out, "Be good to me, I confess, I submit, be good to me and love me." After having suffered all manner of brutality, hypnotism, despair, and panic, there is a final quest for human companionship. But it is ambivalent, mixed with deep, despising hatred and bitterness. Tortured and torturer gradually form a peculiar community in which the one influences the other. Just as in therapeutic sessions, where the patient identifies with the psychiatrist, the daily sessions of interrogation and conversation create an unconscious transfer of feelings in which the prisoner identifies with his inquisitors and his inquisitors with him. The prisoner, encaptured in a strange, harsh, and unfamiliar world, identifies much more with the enemy than does the enemy with him. Unwittingly, he may take over all the enemy's norms, evaluations, and attitudes toward life. Such passive surrender to the enemy's ideology is determined by unconscious processes. The danger of communication of this kind is that at the end, all moral evaluations disappear. We saw it happen in Germany. The very victims of Nazism came to accept the idea of concentration camps. In Menticide, we are faced with a ritual like that found in witch hunting during the Middle Ages, except that today, the ritual has taken a more refined form. Accuser and accused, each affords the other assistance, and both belong together as collaborating members of a ritual of confession and self-denigration. Through their cooperation, they attack the minds of bystanders who identify with them and who consequently feel guilty, weak, and submissive. The Moscow Purge trials made many Russians feel guilty. Listening to the confessions, they must have said to themselves, "I could have done the same thing. I could have been in that man's place." When their heroes became traitors, Their own hidden treasonable wishes made them feel weak and frightened. This explanation may seem overly complicated and involved and perhaps even self-contradictory. But in fact, it helps us to understand what happens in cases of menticide. Both torturer and tortured are the victims of their own unconscious guilt. The torturer projects his guilt onto some outside scapegoat and tries to expiate it by attacking his victims. The victim, too, has a sense of guilt which arises from deeply repressed childhood hostilities. Under normal circumstances, this sense is kept under control. But in the menticidal atmosphere of relentless interrogation and inquisition, his repressed hostilities are aroused and loom up as frightening phantasmagorias from a forgotten past, which the victim senses but cannot grasp or understand. It is easier to confess to the accusation of treason and sabotage than to accept the frightening sense of criminality with which his long-forgotten aggressive impulses now burden him. The victim's overt self-accusation serves as a trick to annihilate the inner accuser and the persecuting inquisitor. The more I accuse myself, the less reason there is for the inquisitor's existence. The victim's going to the gallows kills, as it were, the inquisitor too, because there existed a mutual identification. The accuser is made impotent the moment the victim begins to accuse himself, and tomorrow the accuser himself may be accused and brought to the gallows. Out of our understanding of this strange masochistic pact between accuser and accused comes a rather simple answer to the questions, why do people want to control the minds of others? And why do the others confess and yield? It is because there is no essential difference between victim and inquisitor. They are alike. Neither, under these circumstances, has any control over his deeply hidden criminal and hostile thoughts and feelings. It is obviously easier to the inquisitor than the victim, not only because the inquisitor may be temporarily safe from mental and physical destruction, but also because it is simpler to punish others for what we feel as criminal in ourselves than it is to face up to our own hidden sense of guilt. Committing menticide is the lesser crime of aggression, which covers up the deeper crime of unresolved, hidden hatred and destruction.
And that is The Mysterious Masochistic Pact from The Rape of the Mind by Joost-meerlo, M.D. Back in a minute. Thank you. So I'm going to see if I can deal with this issue on the fly. So it's Bud Light, and there's a trans activist, and now I hear on the radio a guy, not Michael Knowles, but the other guy sounds like Michael Knowles. And so he's going to come out and say, Bud Light must be punished. And the way to punish them is to quit drinking Bud Light. What? First of all, who died and left you in charge? Since when do you get to decide who gets punished and how? First of all, I mean, there's so many things wrong with this, it's ridiculous. The other thing is that that's wrong about this, even if Bud Light deserves to be punished for having a transsexual, notice I didn't say transgender, transsexual, that's what they are, a transsexual spokesman. Even if I it's correct that they need to be punished, and even assuming that you and I have the authority to punish them, do we really believe that boycotting their beer is going to be effective? Right? Do we really think that the people that enjoy Bud Light on a regular basis are really going to stop, that we're going to get enough people to stop drinking Bud Light to have an impact on their bottom line? Right? Do we really believe that? I don't. If you're going to boycott, again, assuming, number one, that Bud Light deserves to be punished. Number two, assuming that we have the authority to punish Bud Light, then a more effective punishment would certainly be dumping their stock. It's a lot easier to do. You can continue to drink their beer, dump their stock. If you just absolutely have to. The other problem with this is that it's a trap laid by the left for unwary conservatives and would-be conservatives. I'm not going to fall for it. And I advise you not to fall for it either. You shouldn't fall for this trap. It's a crude trap. One of the things I was thinking about today is that you always want to, whenever they come out and they want to make the issue, you'll notice that they'll humanize various issues. And the reason they do that is because human beings there's a high awe factor. If it's a policy issue, there's no emotions involved. Immigration versus migrants versus dreamers. Okay, they want to bait Republicans into going after dreamers and migrants. And Republicans shouldn't take that bait. They should instead make sure that the issue is immigration. Okay, now, the same, and even better, is to be able to find an institution to fight. So, anti-immigration policy, let's say we can say anti-immigration is Democrat. And so we're fighting the Democrats. We're not fighting the migrants. Migrants, that brings almost tears to your eyes. Oh, the poor migrants. Don't do that. No. It's like fighting old people, cripples, and children. You don't do that. Okay? Get smart. Turn it on the Democrats. The Democrat Party is anti-immigrant. Okay? That's all we have to do there. And we can do the same thing with Bud Light. One of the things that you can do, because we don't want to deal with the individual involved. I forget what his name is, Mulvaney or something like that, right? TikTok star and all that. We don't want to be seen to be hurting this guy. We don't want interviews with him where he says, oh, last night I went to bed and I spent an hour crying myself to sleep because all these mean people hate me. We don't want that. We don't need it. We really don't. Well, the better way to handle it is to go to Nancy Pelosi and say, Nancy Pelosi, do you support what Bud Light is doing? Okay. Now, if Nancy Pelosi says yes, which there's no other way to handle it, she becomes the target, and she's fair game. Okay. Even though she's out of power, she's not the speaker anymore. I don't know if she's even still in the House, if she retired completely or she just stepped down from the leadership. She's fair game because she's a politician. Okay. Or another way is to go after the Democrat Party. Ask anybody in the Democrat Party. Ask the president. He's the titular head of the Democrat Party. Ask the Senate majority leader. Do you support this? And if you do now, we can say that the issue is the Democrats, the Democrat Party, the DNC. Okay, that will work. People aren't going to get all teary-eyed or misty-eyed over the Democrat Party or misty-eyed over going after Chuck Schumer. Okay, be smart about it. If you go after individuals, you're going to get hammered. You're going to end up painting yourself as a bully. Don't do that. It's stupid. What you want to do is go after the big shots. And the big shots here is the Democrat Party. You go. All you have to do is we could even assume that the Democrats support this because they seem to be big on transsexual activism and all that. So we could just assume and go after the Democrat Party rather than going after the single individual activist. It's going to look like he's being ganged up on. We're going to end up making jackasses of ourselves and setting our public image back decades. Don't do that. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the remainder of Chapter 8 of Don't Think of an Elephant by George-Lakoff, Ph.D.
Even to get these easing the pain measures, the political climate would have to change radically. And as we have seen, just telling people the Piketty economic facts cannot help, because the Piketty facts will not have real effects without radical framing change. What's wrong with runaway accumulation? The major, thus far unframed effect is that runaway exponential accumulation of wealth share tends to kill off the provision of public resources that makes a satisfying and healthy private life possible. The political effect of runaway wealth is, for example, to cut taxes on the wealthy, taking away funding for the public resources that made that wealth possible in the first place. Take university education. There are only so many top research universities. A number of them are public. By cutting funding to such public universities, these public resources have to raise tuition and other costs and so move away from really being public toward being private. The same goes for education at all levels. At the same time, real education is being lost. The point of a classic liberal education was manyfold: to develop one's mind and critical faculties in general, to teach about the world so as to open a world of possibilities in life, to provide skills for learning whatever one needs to learn, and to create citizens who contribute to a democratic society. Because of the runaway loss of satisfying work, education has radically changed. More and more students see education as a direct route to either wealth or a satisfying work life, and are therefore getting educated for today's jobs without the intangible but vitally important personal riches of a liberal education. That is educational robbery, because a liberal education opens up possibilities for one's entire life that an orientation toward today's jobs does not, especially when today's jobs may not be there in the future. The runaway loss of valuable experiences. If those of great wealth own the beaches, it means all others are deprived of the experience of them. Access for most people is cut off. The loss is a loss of experience. This is true not only of beaches, but also of many things that the ultra-rich can experience, but that the lower middle class and poor cannot. Excellent schools, pleasant surroundings, summer camps, trips to lovely or interesting places, the ability to visit family, time off from work, expensive art or music events, nice clothes, great food and wine, healthy food, first-rate medical care, major athletic events, world cultures, great cities, film festivals, and on and on. Money buys experiences of personal value, what a lot of life is about. A single wealthy person can only experience so much. The runaway accumulation of wealth for the rich and the runaway loss of wealth for others means that for most people a runaway loss of experiences of personal value, the loss of a meaningful life. Piketty and global warming. The rise of runaway wealth accumulation at the same time as intensifying global warming has created the perfect storm. And these concepts need to be linked in political discourse. Wealthy corporations and individuals keep reinvesting and getting wealthier. The current framing of global warming in the conservative and often the mainstream media uses both denial and scare tactics, like claiming that addressing global warming is too expensive, would ruin the economy, cost massive job layoffs, increase energy dependency, and so on. These are all false claims, as independent studies have shown. But when the wealthy control what appears in the public media, they can control public discourse and public thought mechanisms through the control of language and imagery. And the worse global warming effects get, the greater the pain on the middle and lower classes, while the effects of global warming can be more easily withstood by those with great wealth. Global warming is the greatest moral issue facing our generation. Accelerating wealth accumulation by the wealthy is a close runner-up. Today, they present a clear and present danger, not just to the United States, but to the world. Growth. There is a major systemic effect of framing the Piketty insight in terms of inequality alone, and not thinking about how it relates to global warming and other major issues, like the pressure for continued economic growth. Piketty is arguing within traditional economic theory. He estimates that R can, in principle, with the right politics, be kept less than G, economic growth measured in terms of GDP, if economic growth G is kept below 2% per year. But growth is compounded and therefore exponential too. Economic growth means population growth, growth in the use of resources, growth in global warming, growth in weather disasters, and growth in the diminishment of the natural world. Over 50 years, even 2% growth is huge. Once one starts talking about global warming, growth itself becomes an issue. Population growth, growth in worldwide production for and by that population, growth in food needs, growth in energy needs, growth in natural resource needs, and so on. Fossil fuel use has to be reversed to avoid global warming disasters. An economy based on growth, even as low as 2% in all these areas, would not prevent a global warming disaster. Models for a new sustainable, that is, non-growth economics are being developed. How does the Piketty insight square with such economic models, if it does at all? That is a systemic causation question that needs to be asked. For example, the main factor in population growth appears to be women's education and the availability and use of contraception. Women's education is affected by poverty, but every bit as much by religion. Religions like Catholicism and Islamism promote population growth, which makes it harder to control global warming. It isn't just whether R is higher than G. The intertwined systemic effects. One of the main take-home points of this book is that framing can have massive systemic effects. The absence of adequate framing can have just as massive effects. Framing the Piketty insight as just about inequality misses most of what we have just discussed. It misses the systemic effects. Framing is about thought, about understanding at the deepest levels, about circuitry in your brain with strong synapses that last, about changing unconscious, automatic, effortless understanding. In other words, about changing common sense. Frame change itself is a systemic effect. There are a lot of frames to be changed. How can such overall change be effected? It begins by strengthening the framing for the progressive moral system and for the progressive view of democracy based around empathy and the responsibility flowing from that empathy. In other words, we have to care about others, fellow citizens of the world we have never met and never will meet, and recognize the fact that the private depends on the public. That in turn depends on another systemic effect, the effect of language and the brain on public discourse, and the failure in universities to teach that effect.
And that was Chapter 8, conclusion of Chapter 8 of Don't Think of an Elephant by George-Lakoff, Ph.D. So all of this, again, sounds rather intimidating. But one of the things that's interesting here, he did finally use the word facts when he was talking about Piketty or Pickaninny or Plingy or whatever the hell the name of this individual that he was quoting. So he finally used the facts, the Piketty facts or whatever he called them. But Just because you call something a fact doesn't make it so. And just because you provide details, details are not to be confused with facts. Now, what he's asking us to do when he says that these are facts is take his word for it. He provides no proof that they are indeed facts. He doesn't show that he was there and that he can verify all of these facts because he was present during all of these facts. He doesn't really cite where he got the facts other than he drops some name. But he doesn't say, I got it from a book that Pickaninny wrote, page 27. No, none of that. So he's demanding that we take his word for it, which is what the left loves to do. They demand we take their word for it, and that's where they start the process of getting us to disprove the unproven. And we don't have to do that. So the other part of this, though, is credibility. This is a man who's writing a book about deceiving people. It's all about framing arguments, and his purpose of framing arguments is to deceive people, to manipulate people. And this is the same guy that demands we take his word for it when he tells us that these are the facts. I don't think so. He has no integrity and no credibility, and therefore, when he says facts, I simply ignore him. Now, he's talking about the economy does this, and people are rich, and the rich are, accumulating wealth at record numbers. And so what? So what? This is a Democrat economy. This is a Keynesian economy. Okay, first of all, the Democrats wanted a Keynesian economy. The conservative economy is a gold standard economy. And right now we're in a Keynesian economy. And so where the government basically has control of the economy. The purpose of a Keynesian economy is to give us ever-increasing prosperity so that my children will be wealthier than I, their children wealthier than them, etc., etc. And they were going to do it by getting rid of what they called boom and bust cycles in the economy, smoothing it out so that you don't have people getting slaughtered during depressions and recessions, etc. Okay, so it's their economy. And you created an economy for ever-increasing prosperity, and now that there are people that are enjoying that ever-increasing prosperity, all of a sudden, Mr. Lakoff doesn't like it. Maybe what it is it must be personal jealousy. Mr. Lakoff must be upset that he's not prospering at the rate or level that other Americans are. So it must be some kind of a jealousy thing. The other thing is that you got to realize that overall, there's no law yet that prevents anybody in this country from becoming wealthy. Okay, so everybody is free to enjoy the fruits of this economy and become as wealthy as they dare to become. So, also, as far as wealth is concerned, because always, usually when the wealth and riches is always a code word for Republicans. Okay, as I had a friend that once asked me, he said, so what is the party of the rich? And I told him, I said, it's the Democrat Party. And he was stunned. And he said, no, let me try this again. What's the party of the rich? And I said, the Democrat Party. The richest people in the United States of America are Democrats. And that's the fact. So maybe if instead of whining and complaining in his book to people that could probably barely afford to pay the $25 price for his hardback book, which is, by the way, making him wealthy, making him rich, maybe he should go talk to Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the guy that Elon Musk, even though Elon Musk seems like sometimes a decent guy, I'm sure he's still a Democrat if he's a citizen. But anyways, how about the guy that runs Facebook? How about the guy that used to run Twitter? How about all of the tech giants? Are they not Democrats? Are they not billionaires? But you're going to whine and complain about concentration of wealth and how the rich are getting richer. It's one of the oldest tropes, if you will, in the Democrat narrative. The rich are getting richer, and that's terrible and horrible and awful. Well, no, it isn't. Everybody, this is the country of opportunity where somebody can come here literally with nothing but the shirt on their back and become wealthy or filthy rich. And it's still that way. There's no law preventing anybody from becoming wealthy, at least not yet. So, next time will be chapter, let's see, what was this? This one was, next one will be chapter 9. So, and again, that was Don't Think of an Elephant, chapter 8 for Don't Think of an Elephant by George-Lakoff, PhD. Back in a minute. Thank you. So Donald Trump's been indicted, and the question then becomes, for the true conservative, is support for Donald Trump. Should I drop my support for Donald Trump because he's been indicted? And I say no, because a true conservative looks at it this way. Number one, it's always going to be about what should happen and deserving. Should Donald Trump get the nomination? Should he be elected president? Does he deserve it? And I've said in the past, he does, because he has the experience and because he has the integrity. He made the promises. He kept his promises. He's one of the better, if not one of the best presidents we've ever had. And on that basis alone, he deserves to get a second term. Now, this indictment doesn't change any of that. None of that has changed. He's still the politician with the most integrity, more integrity than all of the other politicians and office holders put together. And he has the experience. He's the only one other than President Biden who has the experience. So nothing has changed, and Donald Trump still deserves to be the Republican nominee and deserves to be elected president. And that's what should happen. Back in a minute. Thank you. I got more to say on this Bud Light thing. So, true conservative-wise, what does the true conservative do? The true conservative always approaches things of minding their own business, and they ask themselves what's best for them and theirs. Okay? Now, in this particular situation, what that means is whether or not you quit drinking Bud Light depends, and whether or not you're going to be lefty or righty about it depends on whether or not you're trying to save the world. If you're trying to save the country or save the world, you're a lefty, because that's what lefties do. They're movement-oriented, and they're going to try to create some sort of a perfect world or paradise or whatever. We don't do that. Now, if you decide that because of Bud Light's having this, because Bud Light has hired this transsexual activist or TikToker, social media guy, gal, whatever, and that offends you personally, and you've decided, you know what? I no longer have a taste for Bud Light. No, I can't do it. Fine. That's conservative. That's conservative. It's like what I say with people have asked me, well, gee, Ron, is it conservative to put solar panels on your roof? And I tell them it depends on why you're doing it. If you're doing it to save yourself and your family money, you're conservative. If you're doing it because you want to change the world, you're a socialist. The same goes here. If you're disgusted with Bud Light and you've decided you just can't buy, Even the thought of it makes you ill. I can't think of drinking Bud Light anymore because of this, and you quit drinking, that's fine. If, on the other hand, you decide you're going to do this because we have a country to save, as Larry Elder likes to say. If you're looking at it that way, you're trying to be movement-oriented, you're a lefty. You're a socialist. That's all there is to it. Think about it. Back in a minute.
Come with me, and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look, and you'll see into your imagination. We'll begin with a spin, traveling in a world of my creation. What we'll see will defy explanation. Change the world, there's nothing to it. If you truly wish to be, if you truly wish to be, there is no life I know to compare with pure imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be.
This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. So I'm reminding you that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.